Hey, what's up guys? I hope that you're having an amazing week so far. And I have some epic news for you because I've just finished an interview with the one and only Eben Pagan. Now, in case you don't know who Eben Pagan is, well, he's one of the most famous internet marketers in the world. And when I say famous, I really mean it. I mean, think about this. This guy has produced dozens of digital products that have generated hundreds of millions of dollars, right? So he helped a lot of people all over the world, including myself. And it's actually a pretty funny story because I still remember when back in the day when I was a university student with no money, I was pretty much broke. I would take, all the cash I had saved up in a box, and I would book cheap Ryanair flights and I would travel all over Europe on budget, staying in hostels and sometimes not even sleeping at night, just exploring. And I remember one time I traveled to Malaga in Spain with my friend Tom. And we rented a car. We couldn't even afford to get a hotel, so we slept in a car. And we were just driving around before our exams, final exams. And what we did one night, we wanted to go out. But before going out, we decided to listen to Eben Pagan just for half an hour. Okay, listen to him and get pumped up before the party. He was talking a lot about confidence and social dynamics. So we started listening. And the next thing you know, 2-3 hours later, we realized that we are still in the car listening to Eben. Pretty crazy, right? So instead of going out to the party, we ended up spending the evening in the car with Eben Pagan. And it may sound funny, right? But the thing is, his content is really captivating. And he's one of those very few people online. When he produces his content, he has this no bullshit approach. All right, he gives you tremendous value. Okay, he's not going too much around the bush. He's just, throwing value at you. And that's what I like. Okay, he always talks about this concept of moving the free line. So back in the day, many marketers, they wanted to give customers this much value and then get this much value for themselves. But Eben came up with something totally different. So he realized that it's much better to give the longer end of the stick to his customers, right? So he always tries to provide as much value as possible without necessarily thinking about making money. But because of that, he actually makes money because, people are thinking, wow, this guy is giving me so much value. I want to pay him. I just want to pay him somehow. And that's when they end up buying his products. So anyway, I learned a lot from Eben. I could talk for hours about what I've learned from him. But that's why I was so excited about doing this interview because, finally I can talk to him face to face, ask a bunch of questions and talk about his new book because he's publishing a book called The Opportunity. And the cool thing is that I had a privilege to read the book before the official launch. And guys, it was great. It's 300 pages of amazing content. So it was a blast. And I really hope that you will enjoy this interview. I tried to make it as valuable as possible for you guys, and we are both traveling. I was actually filming it right before going to the Himalayas, so we couldn't be in the same place filming, but the quality is pretty good. The interview was a blast. I hope that you will enjoy it, and if you have any questions, post a comment, let me know, and enjoy. So, Eben, pleasure to have you here. It's really a big opportunity for me to talk to you because, as I just told you before this interview when we talked privately here, I'm a big fan of your work and I've been listening to your products for many years now. And I still vividly remember the time when almost 10 years ago, I was a university student, didn't have any cash, and I was booking those cheap flights to basically see Europe for nothing, right? And I remember one time we went to Spain, to Malaga with my friend, and we didn't have money to pay for the hotel, so we slept in a car. And I remember that before going out, we actually came up with this idea to listen to one of your works, to one of your audiobooks. So we said, hey, let's listen to Eben Pagan for half an hour before going out to get into the right state while drinking some good Spanish wine. And the funny thing is that, within 1 or 2 hours, we realized, oh, we are still listening. Maybe we are using you to procrastinate, not going out there. But we ended up listening to you for a few hours and we actually missed the party. So it's pretty surreal, as I told you before, to talk to you right now, considering that I actually do feel that I know you. And another story, my audience probably heard about me talking about this before my courses, that when I was working in a corporation before I started my business in London, as I was cycling to the office, I would listen to your audios. So you are always with me on my journey, and you help me a lot, especially your concepts of always giving value to your audience rather than trying to receive value. Always asking yourself, how can I help other people? That really helped me because when you provide that value, then you obviously get even more in return. So before we even get started, I just want to say once again, thank you so much for everything. And I say this on behalf of my friends who are very excited about this interview because you impacted many of their lives, and they are really grateful as well. So awesome to have you here.
Thank you. And thanks for the story.
So today we're going to be talking about the power of embracing opportunities. I know that you are publishing a brand new book called The Opportunity. And by the way, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to actually read the book before it's even published, because as far as I know, it's not officially available, but your team sent me a copy to have a look. I haven't read the entire thing. I read it on the bus. I didn't have the time because it's a short notice interview, but I read around 150 pages and I was very captivated. I learned a ton of stuff from the book. I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm very excited to talk about it with you today. So first of all, before we get started and before we get into the content itself, I just want to ask you to tell my audience, what's your story? What got you started? Because many people, when they look at you, they think, okay, this guy made hundreds of millions of dollars online. He's friends with Tony Robbins and he travels all over the place. He did all of those big launches. He's a baller. I'm not like this guy. I can't relate. But from what I know is that you started from nothing, right? You started from the bottom. So can you share a little bit more where you came from? What got you started in the business?
Yeah. How long do you want me to talk? You want like the 2-minute version or the 5-minute or the 10-minute? Give me, because I could talk for a long time about my story.
I know you could probably talk for 3 hours just about that. I know you have many stories to share. If you could give us a 5-minute version, because I'm going to ask some follow-up questions after.
Sure. Okay. So I was born, I had hippie parents. Okay. They were children of the 60s. I was born in 1970 and my parents, I was born in New York, in Brooklyn, and they had grown up in the city, in the streets and so forth. And they didn't want me to grow up in the city. So they heard that Oregon was a good place to raise a child in the US. And so they picked me up when I was 2 or 3 years old and moved out to Oregon, which is a little state, in the middle of nowhere. And they moved out into the woods. And so I grew up, I didn't have any role models of success. I mean, we were on government assistance, for most of my life. I was a long-haired rock and roll guitar player in my teenage years. I dropped out of high school when I was a sophomore. I went to a local community college. I dropped out of that school to go on tour with a band. I had a little manual labor job. I mean, I drove cars that were $200, $300, $400 each for most years. I mean, I really, I didn't know people that were successful. I didn't really know anyone that was rich. I didn't know people who even knew people that were rich. In my early 20s, I moved out on my own. I bought a little trailer house that I traded for a guitar and $1,500. Okay, that was my first place. And I was so excited to get that place. And my first month there, the space rent for the trailer was $135. And I couldn't get the money together my first month to pay my rent. And I had to sell one of my guitar amps. And it was, I didn't like that feeling of just not knowing, where the next paycheck was going to come from, or if it was even going to be there. I reasoned, I wanted to make money. I reasoned that people who made money had either gotten rich in real estate or were investors in real estate in some way. It seemed like rich people in real estate went together. That was the best I could come up with. So I went and got a real estate license. And this was in the days when you would go sit in a little room and listen to cassette tapes on headphones over weeks and months. And then you'd go to the state capitol and take a written exam with a whole bunch of stuff that you'll never use again for the rest of your life about just a bunch of weird legal issues and stuff. And then anyway, I got my real estate license. And then there I was with my 2-door Camaro in my ponytail trying to get people to buy real estate. Nobody wanted to buy real estate from me. I was terrified, like going and knocking on people's doors. Or I remember one time I sat down at the telephone to make cold calls, to just call people up and say, hey, would you like to sell your house? And I just sat there looking at the phone, and I got so upset. I just went home and I went to bed. And I was just, I was not a natural salesperson. I didn't understand any of this business stuff. In my whole first year in real estate, I sold 1 1/3 homes, and the one home was very inexpensive, and the third of a home was only because my broker felt bad for me. I made much less money than I was making at my little manual labor job. So humble beginnings. I gave guitar lessons to try to make ends meet. But this process helped me realize that I needed to figure out how to get customers, because I couldn't find people who wanted to buy or sell real estate with me. And I went to a seminar in Eugene, Oregon, where I was living, and there was a guy named Joe Stumpf who owned a company called Buyer for Lonely, still does, wonderful, great real estate trainer. And I figured out how to go to work with him. And I had a music background. I went to work as his audio visual guy, and I just sat in the back of his seminars doing the audio and just taking notes.
Just listening.
And just taking notes. And I did whatever it took. I went to work with him for, it was $400 a month was my paycheck going to work for him. But I knew that I had to learn, and he was really good with sales and marketing. And so I sat back there, and then I also met through him, I met a lot of great marketers and a lot of, great ideas in sales and marketing. And then I just tried various business ideas over that 10 years of my life or something, kind of early 20s to early 30s. And nothing really worked out. Being an entrepreneur, you got to start things, you got to try them. In my late 20s, I had moved to California to work for that company, actually, and then wound up losing my job, and I was alone in a new place, but I had an apartment and a nice car, and still, like, no girls would talk to me. And I thought, wait a minute, I've got the nice car and I got the nice apartment. And so then I made the decision to learn about the dating. And so I started going to seminars and reading books and making friends with guys who were really great at meeting women. Like my next door neighbor in my apartment that I lived, he was a stockbroker, and this young guy, and he just seemed to understand women, and I made friends with this kind of this motley crew of very different guys. And then I learned how to get a date. A few years later, I got an amazing girlfriend, and I realized, people would want to learn this. And I took what I knew about marketing, and a friend of mine had been selling ebooks online, and I took the dating stuff, and I wrote a book called Double Your Dating using the pen name David D'Angelo, and put that online, and it took off. It was just a total shock. It was a total surprise that this was the thing that worked. I am the most unlikely dating guru on the whole planet, I think. But then I started doing seminars, and the business just became very successful. And we had other teachers come in and start teaching relationship and dating advice for women. And then as I was doing that, because I'm so curious about things, I had to hire people and grow my business, and I didn't know how to do that. So I read books and I went to seminars, and as I grew my company, it was 100% virtual. We never had an office. And this was, 15 years ago when this was very new. We eventually got to over 70 people full time, and we never had an office. And a lot of people were asking me, Eben, how are you doing your business? So I started showing them, and then I watched friends of mine be really successful, just like I had done with the dating, really successful at building businesses. So I started teaching entrepreneurship, and the rest is history. I've taught a lot of entrepreneurs around the world. I started investing in technology companies. I found that because I had studied business and entrepreneurship, now if I invested in a new little company, I happen to know all the answers that these new entrepreneurs didn't know. And so I could be a really good advisor and mentor to them. Started going to Burning Man about 10 years ago. That was a complete game changer.
That's where you met your wife, right? At the Burning Man.
And then the next year I met my wife at Burning Man, and now we have a little daughter. And so that was another thing. If I'm the least likely dating guru in the world, then I'm even a less likely dad. But it has turned out to be the most amazing thing. And So anyway, a lot of changes. And then we've been traveling a lot. My wife used to live in different parts of the world in her work when she was younger. And she said, honey, we need to travel more, because I'm an introvert. I'm kind of a homebody. So a few years ago, we picked up and with our little daughter, and we started traveling. And so we travel for the last 3 years. We've been traveling most of the time, probably, 7 or 8 months a year. We've been traveling different parts of the world. And that's been interesting, challenging. And then I realized that what successful people all had in common was opportunity. Like, it really hit me a couple of years ago as I looked around. What are the common denominators of the most successful people that I've met? Because I've met and interviewed hundreds of entrepreneurs, millionaires, billionaires. And and it just hit me, you know, that
Mm-hmm.
they're better at finding and creating and choosing opportunities. That's what great entrepreneurs and investors are good at. And once I got that distinction, it just somehow it made everything make sense. And about a year ago, I started writing this book. I had been making a lot of notes about it. I taught a course, and then yeah, I probably have been going for more than 5 minutes, but the last year I've just been writing this book about opportunity to try to share what I've learned about it with more people, because I think it's starting to change. It's starting to explode, but it can also be overwhelming. And that if we don't know what to
Mm-hmm.
do, you know, we can get shut down by it.
Definitely, definitely. Look, when I look at your history, it seems like you always scratched your own niche, right? So whenever you had a problem, you had problems with dating, you learned it, then naturally you wanted to teach others. Same with marketing, same with business, and it seemed like all of those dots connected eventually, right? So I feel like your book is so important nowadays, is because first of all, there's one group of people, and these are the people who feel like there are not enough opportunities, right? So they walk through life, let's say 18, 19 years old, they look at the world, they have no idea what they want to do. They feel like they don't have enough options. So they try different jobs, they try to learn different things, and they have no idea what's the big picture. And then there's the second group of people, and these are the people who already went to the different level. They started recognizing that opportunities are everywhere pretty much. And then they get overwhelmed with those opportunities. So it's interesting to listen to your story, because it seems like you've been doing so many different things, right? From playing in a band to teaching dating, and then you teach business, and uh, you've done so many different things. But when you look back at your life and all of those different areas you covered, do you see that they built a foundation for what you are doing right now? Do dots connect?
Yes. Yeah, you know, hindsight, right, is always
Mm-hmm.
2020. It always makes sense when you look backwards. It wasn't intentional. What I've tried to do, so every few years I get interested in a new thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And as you'll see later on in the book, I recommend that people start a new passion project at least once a year, you know, like approximately once a year. And, you know, so I started in, you know, playing the guitar. And then from there, I started horse trading and buying and selling guitars and musical equipment. You know, my father loved to go to garage sales and Goodwill
Mm-hmm.
stores and things and secondhand places. And so, you know, I learned how to buy something for $20 and sell it for 50, you know, or pick up a guitar
Uh-huh.
from somebody that had one to sell and, you know, make 50 or $100 on it. And then I also learned how to record and do audio recording. And then later when I went into real estate and that wasn't working out and I needed to learn, when I got the job working with the real estate training company, I took
Mm-hmm.
my background in music and audio. And I had never done a seminar before, but I thought, like, how hard could this be? You know, I said, I
Mm-hmm.
can do this. And I showed up and just opened up all the boxes of their gear and just figured out how to put it together. So I kind of took one thing and I put it into the next. And I would play the music at the seminars, and I had a music background. So I would go and try to pick really good music to play there. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, later when I did my own seminars, I made sure that the audio visual of the seminars was good. And I always played good music, and I tried to play interesting music at my seminars. You know, there was a period, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago when I became interested in photography. And
Uh-huh.
it just was something that looked interesting to me. And so I got some books and I bought a camera and I started going out and taking pictures and learning about lighting. And I learned, I mean, very simple things. I mean, I'm not the world's greatest photographer, but once
Mm-hmm.
you learn that there are these rules, like the rule of thirds, and you learn about how the aperture in the camera works, and you learn how for lighting, you don't really need much. You just need one good lighting source. And sometimes you can use like a little bounce, or, you know, the difference between the way a softbox looks versus other things. And, you know, spend a few hours a week learning about something. You do that for a
Mm-hmm.
year or two, and you understand it. You have a competence in it. And then you put that together with the other things that you're doing, and you say, okay, how could I use this in some combination? And for example, now when I don't really do them as much anymore, but if I do a live seminar, maybe I do them once a year or something. Hopefully we're going to start doing them more again. But when I do it, I set it up. All these things that I've done in my background, they all come, and I try to use them as much as I can to make a nice event and make it look good, and make the lighting look good, and make the video look good, and have the audio sound good, and get the right microphone, and all of these different things, you know. And then there's all the layers about how the content work. And I recommend this is a little bit of a tangent, but I always recommend that people try to learn future-proof skills, right? I call them future-proof, meaning
like
skills.
Evergreen skills, right?
Yeah, well, skills, when I say future-proof, they are evergreen, but what I mean is that they're going to become more valuable in the future.
All right. That's interesting. That's really
right.
interesting.
Yeah, it's a distinction that you have to think about for a little while. So for example, I'm a guitar player. When I was in middle school, I played the trombone for a few years, part of high school. And then I played the guitar, the electric guitar. I'm a rock and roll guitar player. And I'm really glad that I learned music. My father was musical. But the trombone it's not really a very future-proof instrument. Okay, you don't see a lot of people on stage, right, playing trombone. It's not a popular instrument. The guitar, it's a more future-proof instrument, but I listen to a lot of electronic music now, and I try to follow the currents of music. I love watching the evolution of things. And the guitar, if you want to make electronic music, the guitar isn't a very good input device, right? When I look back, right, I wish that I would have learned to play the keyboard.
Yeah,
because the
exactly.
keyboard is the future-proof instrument. It's the one that gets more valuable over time, right? The more you do it. And so some things, you can get close, but I wasn't thinking this way back then. I was just learning skills that I needed. But then it started to dawn on me, look across life and think about what are we going to need in the future? What skills am I going to need in 3 years and 5 years and 10 years, and learn those skills now and put them together with the other ones. That's a winning strategy.
So it seems like learning is one of the keys to finding great opportunities, right? Because the more you learn, the more knowledge you have, the more experiences you have, the more opportunities come to your life, right?
Yeah.
Definitely when I look at your life and even at my life, I see that the more I learn, the more I realize how much is out there. First of all, the more I realize how much I still don't know, how much I have to learn. But then I start noticing all of those amazing opportunities around me. So there are many people who walk through life and they feel like they don't have enough options. I know that I have many old friends who keep telling me that there are simply not enough opportunities. And the way I view the world, nowadays anybody can go online and start a business just like this. Anybody can build an online course, publish a book. You no longer have to approach a big publisher. You want to start a drop shipping company? It's quick. You can start it in a matter of days. You want to build a website, as you write in your book, back in the day when you built your first website, you needed to sit for weeks, if not months. Now you can just sit for a few hours and you have a basic website. So I always scratch my head thinking, this is weird. I feel that there are opportunities everywhere. So what would you say to someone who's perhaps a young person who don't see all of those opportunities around? What would be the best way to change their way of thinking and get started on this new path? And by the way, how do you define opportunities? Because one thing that I love about your work, and people who follow you, I'm sure that they know it, you pay very close attention to definitions, right? You always say that if you define something very clearly, everything changes. And even when I was reading the book and when you're defining what the opportunity is, opportunus, right? And I started thinking about it and I realized that now, even when I use the word opportunity, it means something totally different in my mind. So can you talk a little bit about that as well? Because I find it utterly fascinating. And I wish we had like 5 hours to talk about all of those things. Man, I have so many questions for you.
Okay. You asked two different questions here about what I would say to the young people and then about the definition. And each one I think deserves an answer. These are very important questions. So let me answer the first one first, and then we'll get to the second one. Okay.
Sure.
So to the young people who feel like they don't have much opportunity. And this is a real tragedy across the world right now. So many people don't feel that they have opportunities. They see, huge success happening for all these billionaires, and they don't feel like any of it's available to them. So a couple of thoughts that I have here. One, a lot of this I think comes from our cultural upbringing, the time that we were brought up, our family, the belief systems that we grew up in. So for example, if you grew up in a poor family and there was a lot of conflict and fighting and bad feelings around money, you're going to grow up probably with negative feelings toward money and not feeling deserving and not feeling abundant and not feeling like it's something that you can do. So you've got to go in and change your self-talk and change your beliefs and change your emotional relationship to money and to success. Well, opportunity is very similar in that, so here's something, for example, entrepreneurs know something that most people don't know. And entrepreneurs are only maybe, a couple of % of the population, although we're all, Mark Zuckerberg says now we live in an entrepreneurial culture. We're all going to need to learn to be more entrepreneurial. I've been teaching this to people for over 10 years now. Entrepreneurs have learned things that other people haven't learned because they're just like someone who plays sports has learned something that other people haven't learned, and people who teach learn things that other people haven't learned. Entrepreneurs who start businesses, they've learned something that other people haven't learned. And what they've learned is that most of the things that you try in business that are new don't work out the way that you expect them to. Now, this is surprising to someone who's grown up in an education system where, for example, you go through a class, on math or history or English or, whatever your language is, and there's an assumption that there's a right way to do everything. There's an assumption that there's one way you can learn the right way to do things, and then you're going to go through it, and at the end, you're going to be able to take a test, and you're going to be able to know the answers. That is not the way entrepreneurship works. Entrepreneurship works like this. You go and you try something. There's about a 1 in 5 chance that it's going to work the way that you want it to work, whether that's a product or a business idea or an advertisement or someone that you hire for a particular role or whatever it is. There's maybe a 1 in 3, 1 in 5 chance that it's going to work the way that you want it to work. If you come from a education or a job mindset where everything is expected to work and any mistakes are embarrassing or expensive, you're going to be optimizing for not making mistakes. You're going to be optimizing to get it right. And what happens to a lot of people who have thrived in an academic setting or in kind of, standard work types of routines, they come into entrepreneurship and they go, okay, what do I do first? And I'll say, just try something immediately. Put a product on the market as fast as you can and see what people think of it so you can adjust it and you can tweak it, or run an ad and see if anybody clicks on it. You've got to be cycling. You've got to be trying lots of things. They get frozen, and what's underneath their frozenness is often, I don't want to look bad. I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to run an ad and then my friends are going to see it and then they're going to make fun of me and then it won't work and then I'm going to feel embarrassed and ashamed. When actually what we need to have learned is, when it comes to entrepreneurship, when it comes to leadership, actually, okay, when it comes to entrepreneurship, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to innovation, we have to be willing to try lots of stuff, be the beginner in new areas, have it be a badge of pride that you tried more things that didn't work than anyone else, right?
Exactly.
You know that old thing about Michael Jordan where he says, I've taken more shots that I missed than anyone else, right? That's the game here. I think it was John Bon Jovi that said, it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you stand back up. And so part of the answer to why people don't see opportunity is because what they don't see, a lot of people have opportunity. We can get into the definition here. A lot of people have opportunity unconsciously defined as something as like a sure thing.
Exactly. Yes.
Right? To them, an opportunity is you're walking down the street and you see money on the ground and you pick it up and you put it in your pocket. That's an opportunity. Or an opportunity is like when someone calls you up and says, I've got your dream job. Okay, you're going to be living in Hawaii. You're going to be working on the beach. You're going to get paid $1 million and you don't have to do anything. Like that's what they see as opportunity. Opportunity comes not prepackaged as the money laying on the street. It comes prepackaged as you recognizing something that you uniquely can see, because your personality, your unique personality and your kind of gifts, your genius sees it, recognizes how it could create some value in the world. And then you go and you try it, and then you see that it works in some way, and then you can grow it, you can kind of scale it. So you got to try a lot of stuff to start seeing how much opportunity there is. And I'm telling you, for entrepreneurs, I'm watching my friends, I'm watching the smartest entrepreneurs that I know right now. We are all inundated. We cannot believe how much opportunity is being created right now by the interconnections that are coming from technology, from the internet, from being able to travel, going to different places and seeing how they do things in different, you can learn about different industries. I mean, to be able to go and watch videos of different types of people who are learning different things and doing different things, and then bring those ideas back and use them where you're at. It's an unprecedented explosion of opportunity. A lot of it has to do with learning. A lot of it has to do with evolving yourself, and experimenting and trying lots of things. So that's the first part. The second piece, to answer the question about the definition, right? So the dictionary defines opportunity as a favorable juncture of circumstances. Okay, so a favorable juncture, it's when there's a coincidence. It's like a happy accident, and then you can go and do something and make something possible, right? In the stock market, like in Wall Street, they have a term arbitrage, and arbitrage on Wall Street, kind of technically, more specifically, the way they would use it means seeing how there's a stock or a bond or something over here in one market that is priced differently from another market, where you can buy it over here and you can sell it over here at the same time instantly. So you can like buy for $10 and sell for $11, and you can make instant no risk profit. Okay, so that's kind of where the word arbitrage came from. A lot of arbitrage is being used now if you're an internet marketer, right? Arbitrage, we tend to think of it as, let's say I can spend $1 on advertising, but I can get $2 back in sales. Sure. We might think of that as being arbitrage, all right? And arbitrage can happen across space and time, but that's another definition of opportunity, right? Where you can kind of get very low risk, high return, where you can get a big return on your investment. You mentioned opportunists there, right? If you go back to the etymology of opportunity.
I loved it in the book. That part was amazing.
Yeah, it's a cool word. And opportunists, I was just talking to a friend of mine about opportunity, and he had studied Latin, and he was telling me about this himself, and he was saying, oh, what does this mean? And I had already looked it up, but we were jamming on it. And so to be in a state of opportunist, it was when you were on a ship, and the ship had made it into the harbor, and it had like the wind in its sails, and it could see the port that it was sailing to. When the port came into sight, it was in a state of opportunist. And so there's something about that moment when you can see where you're going, you can see the possibility, and it clicks for you, and you get like the reward chemicals, almost like when you're playing a video game and you see the prize and you can see to go for it. You get like a pre-reward, flood of chemicals into your body. That's opportunity, and they're very motivating. Now, what
the slot machines, right? That's why people play them. One of the examples, right?
Exactly, right. So counterfeit opportunity is, that's a challenge. You have to watch out for these things because a lot of people have learned how to push buttons. I mean, I'm a professional marketer. I have studied for years how to get people motivated, to get them to pay attention, to get them to make buying decisions. I try to do it in an ethical way, and I try to sell only things that I think are really going to help people. But there are a lot of people that are not that way, and big buildings big buildings full of these types all over the world who are just studying how to get people to take certain actions. So you got to watch out for that. One of the things that struck me about the definitions of opportunity, right? So the favorable juncture of circumstances and arbitrage and some of these, they really tend unconsciously to put opportunity out there. It's outside of you. It's something that happens outside of you, and you just happen to luck upon it. Whereas to me, opportunity is a creative activity. It's something that you go and you do proactively. Opportunity is something that you go into the world, you look at what's available, and then you use your mind and your knowledge and your personality and your relationships to ask, how could these things be put together in some new way? How can they be combined into a new emergent or a new product or new service or new knowledge that then could go out and create a lot of value for people? And so one of the things that I'm trying to do with the book is I'm trying to bring the concept of creativity, of creating, to opportunity, so that we no longer, feel like, oh, well, no opportunity is coming to me, so, poor me. We feel no opportunity is coming to me. Let me go out and create some, because that's an indicator that I need to go and get proactive about this. And I need to use tools, and I need to learn skills. I need to learn opportunity skills. And so that's what I really want to get across, is that opportunity is a creative act. It's something that you do proactively in your life.
Sure. This is really fascinating because, I mean, you said so many interesting things here. But when you mentioned that the ship gets to the port, um, I noticed that many people, when they are at that level, that moment where they are about to enter the port, they see it. That's an opportunity right there. You mentioned this chemical response of almost having that quick gratification. Oh, wow, I see it. I can grab it. Most people stop and get paralyzed by fear because they realize that, as you said, in order to grab that opportunity, they have to put some of their effort there. It's not going to be lying there waiting for them. There's a certain window of opportunity that's going to eventually just disappear. And in today's world, those windows get shorter and shorter. So you mentioned in the book that we have an abundance of opportunities that are everywhere, but at the same time, when you see one, you got to grab it. So back in the day, I know you read Jim Rohn, right? He used to say that opportunity is like a cup of tea. It stays warm for a little while, but it's changing a lot now. It's no longer a cup of tea. It's much quicker now. Sometimes it's just about making a decision within 10 seconds. And if you say no to that opportunity, or if you don't take certain action, it's gone forever. So what would you say to people again who struggle with finding those opportunities? What would be the first step to start not only finding them, triggering them, but also embracing them? Because many people are stopped by fear, right? You see that thing that can bring value to your life and to the lives of others. You know what you should do, but then your heart starts beating faster and you start sweating and you get dizzy and you realize that, oh shit, I have to actually do something. You start overthinking. When you overanalyze, then it's called paralysis by analysis, and eventually it's gone. It's like that guy who sits in a bar and sees a beautiful woman and wants to talk to her, but he is overthinking, and the next thing you know, she disappears. Or sitting in an audience and the speaker says, who'd like to ask any question, or I need a volunteer who can come up to the stage. And you want to do it. And by the way, I've been in those situations myself. You want to do it. You want to go there. You want to push your comfort zone. You want to say something, but that fear is holding you back. And the moment the opportunity disappears, the moment that window kind of shatters in front of you, you have a good excuse, because it's easy to say to yourself, well, it's not my decision anymore. The opportunity is gone. I would do it, but it's gone. So how do you work with that? How do you make sure that you know how to trigger those opportunities, and when you see them, you actually find enough confidence to embrace them?
Well, fear is an interesting thing. I dedicate a whole section in the book to emotions and emotion management, because it really is our emotions in a lot of cases that derail us around opportunities. And a lot of times we're not even aware that the emotion was there. It just kind of took over and changed our thinking. And emotions, they put us into these different modalities of thought where we kind of become, if you've seen that movie Inside Out, they take over and they create like sub-personalities or sub-parts of us. And we don't realize, oh, I've become my scared self here. And my scared self thinks this way, or I've become my, my angry self, or my jealous self, or my envious self. One thing that's important to realize is that fear is natural, and it's what got us here. And that we are descended from a long line of fearful, paranoid animals that were very good at avoiding dying and losing things. And if you look at the work of Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, who created prospect theory and really created this whole world of cognitive biases. In prospect theory, what they've kind of proven mathematically and psychologically proven is that we're about twice as motivated to avoid something bad happening as we are to achieve something or get something we want. So we will do twice as much to avoid losing $100 as we'll do to get $100. On average, right? We'll do twice as much to avoid losing $100 as we'll do to get $100. And that worked when we were running around, on the savannah in Africa, and there were, saber-toothed tigers and things running around. You needed to be very paranoid, and you needed to run if the bush, wiggled a little bit. But nowadays, we're all born into this world where, even people that are the worst off on the planet, and in most cases are still doing better than, we were doing back then, when only, whatever,
Exactly.
1 in 5 of us survived to adulthood or something. And we have to realize that we're in a better world, and we're mostly safe, and we mostly, you don't have to worry about walking out and having a pack of hyenas come after you and your child. Some people still do, but most of us don't have to worry about that anymore. And so we take all the fear that we're programmed to feel, and we project it onto watching the news or gossiping or thinking something's going to go wrong with our, current business project. And so just knowing that you're programmed to feel fear basically twice as much as desire. And then when you feel fear, just saying, you know what, that's okay that I feel fear, accepting it, and then going and feeling it, processing it, doing some work with it. Napoleon Hill, I mean, he dedicated Think and Grow Rich basically to this idea that if you could vividly imagine the thing that you want, and you got really clear about it, you got crystal clear and specific, and you wrote it down and you said it out loud, you read it to yourself every day, that what you would do is you would create a burning desire. And in a lot of ways, Think and Grow Rich, it was kind of an antidote to fear, right? Trying to help you create desire so that you wouldn't pay attention so much to your fear. You would think about more about what you desire. And so if you're afraid, if you have fear a lot, just want you to know that that's natural. I have fear a lot too. David Ogilvy says in Ogilvy on Advertising, he thinks when he sits down to write an advertising campaign, every time he thinks this is the one that's going to fail. And,
yes.
I'm doing a launch right now for my new book, and I've worked harder on this book than on anything. I mean, I can't remember working this hard on something, putting this much time into something. And I don't know. I don't know if anybody's going to like this thing. When you told me that you've been reading it, you really like it. I've only sent it out to a handful of folks, like some of our partners, friends, and family, proofreaders, and that kind of thing, just a little bit. I mean, I didn't even get very much proofreading done of the whole thing. When people come back and say, like, I really liked it, I say, okay, good.
Yes.
I'm glad. And I'm still worried because who knows what's going to happen.
And you know what's funny?
Say again?
Just want to add, the funny thing is that most people, when they look at you, they actually feel that you never feel fear. Most people look at you, they read your bio, they see your products, and they assume, this is Eben Pagan, that's Tony Robbins, that's Brian Tracy. Those guys are veterans. They no longer feel fear. But I know that it's not true, right? You always have that a little bit, and it's important because it fuels you. It keeps you on your feet, right? It keeps you sharp between the ears. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions people have. And I mean, what you just said makes total sense, that you will always experience that, right? So you got to learn how to use it to your advantage. I mean, before I speak on a stage, I've done it a bunch of times and I love it, but every time before I get on a stage, I feel my heart beating faster. But then I say to myself, I'm excited now. I'm excited. So instead of feeling anxious, I take that word anxiety and I turn it into excitement, because the symptoms are very similar, right? So what's your strategy? What would you say? What do you do when you feel that self-doubt sometimes? Mental tail chasing, when you feel like, oh, this is not going to work.
Yeah, I want to speak to the thing you said where it's like, you don't think I feel fear anymore. I am continually finding new creative ways to feel fear in my life. Okay. Fear it's an ally, and my little baby daughter was born 5 years ago, and you're just making me think of this funny story. I haven't thought of this in a while, but she was born, and we had her here at our home. We live in Miami basically during the winters, and we had her here, had a little home delivery, and our midwife and the woman that was helping us have our daughter, she said, take her outside for about 5 or 10 minutes in the early morning or the very late afternoon in the sun, so she can get like a little bit of just direct sunlight, but the very, light kind of thing. And I said, oh, you know what, that kind of makes sense, that she could have a little bit of light on her. And so a day after she was born, when my wife was resting, I was like, you know what, I'm going to take her out to the beach here, and I'm just going to see how she likes it. And I opened up the door, and I was holding her, and I took her out on the balcony, and she kind of calmed down. I could tell that she liked being, I could just tell that she was looking around, and She wasn't fussing at all. And I just said, honey, I'm going to take her out to the beach. And so I just bundled her up on my chest and I went downstairs. And as I was going downstairs with her to go out, all of a sudden these ideas started coming into my mind. They were like, actually it happened. It was even before I went downstairs, I think. Anyway, I started wondering, like, what if there's a dog down there and it comes and bites my child? Or what if an eagle that's flying around comes and snatches her? Or like, can I go in the water? What if fish come up? Or what if there's a bad person and they come and grab my daughter? And I think I actually, that day or the next day, I think I even like found a pocket knife and like stuck it in my pocket. Started carrying that around. So it was like, anyway, and then I started asking my friends, like, am I crazy? And my friends who are fathers said, oh, no, that's totally normal.
That's normal. That's a phase.
Oh, yeah, of course. And then, you start thinking, wait a minute, now I have a daughter. What if something happens to my wife? And then now all of a sudden I'm worrying about my wife, dying, or, myself dying and my family. And it's not like I sat around all day, every day thinking someone's going to get my daughter, or, something's going to happen to me. But if you're, I think if you're a mature, normal, responsible adult human being, you have the fear, it sparks a possibility in your mind. And then you realize, oh, right, if something happens to me in this family, if I die, I need to do things so that they're okay. And that could be, being financially responsible, but it can also be things like my wife and I now, we cross-train each other. We try to teach each other what we know. My wife's more emotionally intelligent than me. I'm better at, let's say, entrepreneurial things or more pragmatic stuff. We try to cross-train each other so that if something did happen to one of us, we would be able to bring as much of what our relationship has to our child anyway. And we could be we could be the best version of that we could. And this is realized through fear. And I think Gavin de Becker wrote The Gift of Fear. It's a gift in a lot of ways. The challenge is if you get stuck in it, if you just start worrying all the time, or you don't take the gift, you don't receive the message that was given to you and then go do something with it, have it be an alert, that pops up on your screen and says, hey, go cross-train your partner, or go learn go ask your partner what they're doing and learn how they see the world. When you do that, then the fear, right, can subside because you've done the thing that it is to do. And if you have a lot of irrational fear, if you have too much fear, you can go get therapy, and I think you should if you're really stopped by fear. But fear is a gift.
That's really interesting, because most people, when they think fear, they think something negative. But I totally agree with you. I think fear can fuel you if you only stop, pause, and take a deep breath and reflect, right? Because I see in many people, they make the mistake of running like a headless chicken. And when they get afraid, they get into this downward spiral, and they keep running around, and basically they become even more afraid. But if they only stopped and became self-aware, right? Okay, what do I feel now? Okay, I feel afraid. What sensation do I feel? Okay, my heart is beating faster. Cool, my body's getting ready for action. I'm breathing faster. Awesome, I have more oxygen. So try to feel your body and ground yourself, and then assess the situation. Is this fear rational? Is it not? What can I do about it? Just like you just explained, right? I feel like this is probably one of the best ways to handle that. To switch gears a little bit, we talked about not having enough opportunities, but there are also many people who have an abundance of opportunities. They see them everywhere, and they experience something called the paradox of choice. So Barry Schwartz wrote a great book, The Paradox of Choice, gave a great TED Talk as well about the topic. And I can relate with myself a lot because I'm also a nomad. I keep moving around. I'm in Berlin right now, but I don't live here. I'm going to Nepal. I just came back from Colombia. I keep traveling nonstop. And I see so many opportunities everywhere. And sometimes it gets overwhelming. And even though I know those mechanisms and I know my own self-deception, I know what's happening, I still fall into this trap of thinking, I have a few weeks for myself to go and record a new video course. Will I go to Barcelona, or maybe I'm going to go to Colombia, or maybe I'm going to go to Panama? And I start thinking about options, and then I have option for the platform and this and that. And initially the idea seems really exciting, And within 2 hours of overthinking, I almost regret that I'm having those opportunities because I'd rather just have one option and go for it and be happy. And now I have to think about what to choose. And there's this inner voice saying to me that whatever I choose, I probably could have made a better decision. So what would you say to people who experience that, who see so many different options everywhere? How do you nail down your focus? How do you make sure that you choose the right opportunities for you? I know it's a big question, but
Yeah. Well, I think we need to take a more long-term perspective on opportunity. Opportunity, the connotation of opportunity is that it's short-term, but really we need to start looking at opportunity as a long-term phenomena. An opportunity is a good one for you if it can help you get the outcome that you want to get. So if it's in business, it'll help you make the kind of money you want to make, or if it's an investment, it'll give you the return that you want to make. So financially, it has to, be good. But it's also important that it uses your unique talents, that it grows you as an individual, right? So in the book Flow, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, he says that there's this thing called a flow channel, and on one axis you have the challenge, and then on the other axis you have your skill, and you have to grow the challenge and the skill at the same time so that you are always engaged in what you're doing. If the challenge is too high and the skill is too low, you get anxiety. And if the skill is too high and the challenge is too low, you get boredom. And so you have to match these things to each other, right? You have to do something that is really good for your personality. Too many people haven't gone and taken simple personality tests. They haven't gone and taken a Myers-Briggs test and an Enneagram test, and you can do Kolbe or DISC or some of these other models that are out there. And whether you believe in them or not, take the big 5 personality tests, whether you believe in that model or not, the reflection that you get, it'll help you see in a lot of cases, oh yeah, that is something that I'm really good at. That is something that I enjoy doing. Maybe I could go learn more about that. Or maybe I could find people that are also interested in this topic, and then I could go and learn with them or learn from them. Yeah. So it's got to engage you. It's got to put you into the flow state. Another thing is it's got to be aligned with your long-term growth. It's got to be aligned with who you're trying to become.
The vision.
Yeah, it's important to know what you look like when you're actualized, like what your potential is. And the way that you get in touch with that is you find other people who are roughly like you, or you find domains that you're really interested in, and you see what the highest performance is there. And then you think about, like, what could my life look like if I was in physically the best shape that I could be in? What would it look like if I was very successful financially? What would it look like if I was in the ideal environment? What would it look like if I had the emotions that I want to feel? What would it look like if I had the relationships that I want to be in? What would it look like if I was learning and growing the way that I want to learn and grow? What would it look like if I was in the cultures I want to be in? What would it look like if I was on my purpose? What would it look like if I was making a big contribution or a big impact in the world? And as you ask those questions and you study that, over years of your life, you will fill in all of those blanks, and you'll start to be able to get a vision of yourself as a more self-actualized person. And then opportunity is something that helps you get closer to that thing, helps you learn a skill, helps you, take a step, helps you, get some knowledge, helps you collaborate with people, helps you connect, build social relationships with folks that'll help you become more actualized. And I think also an opportunity, it has to build your self-esteem. When you're finished with it, you have to feel better about yourself. You have to feel like you've done something that you're proud of. Something could be totally engaging to you and really challenge you, but it could be playing a video game. And at the end of it, if you look back and you say, am I glad that I played that video game for the last hour? Did that really help me become a more self-actualized person? You might realize, no, it actually didn't. I mean, I was in the flow state. I was totally engaged. I was very challenged, but that isn't going to help me reach my potential in life. What's going to help me reach my potential is going and finding a great partner to have a romantic relationship with, or working on my health, or going and learning something, or traveling like you're doing.
So it's quite tricky, right? Because as you said, there is, and I used to say this a lot in your audiobooks back in the day, Short-term gratification versus long-term result. I still remember, I still listen to this a lot. And it makes sense, right? Because something may feel good in the moment. You may feel in a flow state, but does it really serve your long-term vision? That's really important. So Eben, we don't have too much time left. I appreciate your time, and I know you have another call very soon. But to wrap up, and to be honest, we got to do another call at some point because there are so many things to talk about. Man, I feel like we could talk for many, many hours. So many questions I would like to ask you. But I'm really interested to hear, for the ending, for you personally, what is the biggest opportunity right now?
You mean in my life, or is
in
that
your
I think
life?
other,
In
for
your
other
life. I'm actually curious about your life. For you personally, right now, what do you perceive to be your biggest opportunity?
Well, there are two things that I'm working on right now that are my own passion projects. As I mentioned, I think everyone should start a new passion project around once a year, and I have a whole section on that in the book where you start doing something you're interested in just because you're interested in it. And then later, if it starts going somewhere, maybe turn it into a business or a philanthropy or a hobby or something, right? So I have two passion projects. One of them is just starting to get traction and it's going to turn into a business thing. And then the other one is something, I'll just tell you what they are. So the first one is mental models, okay? Models for how to do things. And a mental model is basically like a little map that you carry around in your brain for how to do something in life. The Pareto Principle is probably the most famous mental model. The 80-20 rule, 80% of the results come from 20% of the input or the effort. Vilfredo Pareto, he looked around in his life and he noticed that 80% of the land was owned by 20% of the people, and 80% of the peas in his garden was in 20% of the pods. And we've all probably heard this story. And so he realized that in life, 80% of time is basically wasted on things that don't matter very much. And it's only the 20% of the time, effort, energy that gets us most of our results. And so we want to go and focus on that. And once you know that, whenever you go somewhere, if you get a new job, for example, you go in there and you say, okay, what's the 20% of this job that matters? And you don't put your time into studying everything. You just focus on the 20% that really matters. If you're looking around in your life and you say, I'm starting to get, there's a lot of friction in my life. A lot of my relationships are having challenges. You'll notice that 80% of the friction in the drama is coming from 20% of the people that you know. And that just knowing that helps you to go, oh, well, maybe I should work on the 20%. Maybe I should spend less time, or maybe I should work harder on helping these people resolve their problems. But just knowing the 80-20 as a mental model or map is a big deal. So I've been collecting these for many years. I've been interested in them. But last year, I got a mastermind together with a group of friends that are all into mental models, and we all started sharing them. And now I'm actually working with somebody on a program to teach mental models. Charlie Munger says, Warren Buffett's partner, self-made billionaire, he says you need about 100 mental models from diverse domains, all loaded up in your mind that you can use in combination. Okay, so diverse mental models, 100 of them, loaded up in your mind that you can use in combination. Then you become super generative. You become a very creative person. So mental models, it's a big deal. It's the future for, I think, all of us. And it's something I've worked on. And in fact, this book is a kind of a compendium of many of my favorite mental models for creating opportunity, finding it, deciding, scaling it, et cetera, et cetera. Whole section with a whole bunch of mental models. So if you want
You
to
have
know
the
more,
book there, by the way, right? You have, can you? Awesome.
here it is. Yep, opportunity. And so if you go in here, just read it all the way through the beginning. It transmits a mindset that you have to get first, and then it teaches the emotional game. Then we get into the mental models, and then some other things. And if you want, I can talk about that in a sec. And the second thing I'm really interested in as an opportunity is getting married and meeting my wife. My wife's a love coach, and she's really brilliant at relationship. It has opened my eyes to the importance of romantic relationship, of really finding your partner. And once you find your partner, really taking the relationship seriously, not thinking of it as like a temporary or a maybe kind of thing, and learning how to work through conflict and learning how to collaborate, learning how to take two different people that have different ideas, different sets of skills, and then use them like two wings on one bird, or use them like two legs running, on one person. And to figure that out, to get into to harmony, to get into synchronization with someone that's very different from you, it's hard. and it triggers you and it activates you and it gets to all of your deepest issues. And you really learn how much you're projecting onto other people and how much you're not taking responsibility, and that you learn about what you've gotten from your family and your culture and your personality. And if you really follow it all the way down and you take your romantic partner as a practice partner in personal development and in spiritual evolution and in collaboration and partnership, there's so much available there. There's so much. My relationship, it is the hardest thing that I've ever done by far. My family, my wife and my family, but I've learned so much from it. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And to be in a relationship where you make the decision that you're staying forever, like we are staying together forever and we are going to figure this stuff out. There's kind of a no going back. And you know my background. I did not think that I was going to get married. I didn't think I was going to have a family. I thought I was going to be single for the rest of my life. And so this is a very interesting thing for me in particular to be saying. But this work with my wife, we've been taking a lot of notes. We teach a little bit on it sometimes, but we're going to be teaching on this starting soon. And I'm very passionate about this, about teaching people to find a collaboration partner and their romantic partner, and then how to turn that conflict into more intimacy and into more power. And I think that the couple and the partnership is going to become the basic unit of leadership in the future. And that we have to learn to collaborate and partner with other people. And it all starts in the romantic relationship. That's where the deep issues are. And most people just close their eyes and turn away and they don't look deeper, but I think that we need to. So those two, mental models, romantic relationship.
Awesome. And I like what you wrote in the book. You actually said that the marriage with your wife is the biggest opportunity of your life. I love that one. Eben, I wish we could talk for longer. I know you gotta jump in another call, and I want to give you the time to actually get a sip of water and take a few deep breaths. It's been a busy day for both of us, but Eben, it's been a pleasure. And man, it's really a bit surreal to talk to you, because I listen to you. I know your voice. As I said, cycling to the office back in the day, listening to you. So it's very, very cool to talk to you, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to actually jump on a call right before my trip to the Himalayas and to chat and share some experiences. But I'm sure we're going to talk again, and thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.